Ladies and gentlemen, singles, couples, and it's still complicated. Internet. My name is Peridiam, and it wouldn't be a season of Big Brother without a little bit of love in the air, or in the HOH shower. I never really talk about romance and how it relates to Big Brother, but after covering this topic recently in regard to Survivor, I began to wonder, why not? Well, okay, no, I know why not, but why not revisit a concept as uncompelling as TV love, as cringe-inducing as reality romance, and break it down into a cold equation of numbers and percentages that ultimately answered a burning question I've never really asked myself. Is getting into a showmance on Big Brother actually a good idea for your game? Is going on the show with your loved one a good idea for your game? Is heavy flirting, or maybe even a quick tonsil hockey session in the HOH room when nobody's looking, worth it in the end? To answer these questions, I took the same approach as I did with Survivor. I broke this subject down into 3 categories: romances, showmances, and flirtmances. In other words, if you enter the game with your partner, you're in the romance category. Think Big Brother 13 with Brendan and Rachel. But if you did find love, or something close to it, after entering the game, I have put those relationships in the showmance category. A romance on a show. Again, think Brendan and Rachel, but on Big Brother 12.
I moved to Vegas when I was 22 because it's part of me. And I said I would give it up for you.
I fell in love with you for who you are, not because of what you represent.
That is who I am. I'm sorry.
No, Rachel?
Brandon, I am Vegas.
Lastly, we have the most ambiguous category, the Flirtmances. Players who flirted with each other, maybe even coupled up, but not to the extent of a showmance. The difference between showmance and flirtmance is very subjective. I won't die on any of these hills arguing semantics, but regardless, let's dive in and figure out which of these dynamics has had it best and worst, starting from the top. No, scratch that. Let's start from the bottom and with the lewdest. The worst performing showmance, if you can even call them that, is from the 2 players who were the first to ever consummate their showmance in the Big Brother house, and that is David and Amanda on Big Brother 4. Yeah, these 2 were the first to do it, and certainly not the last, but overall, they have the worst performance to date, both being evicted pre-jury in the bottom 15% of this season between the 2 of them, and wow, we are off to a bad start when it comes to romance on the show. To be clear, I'm not even sure I would call them a showmance given they only hooked up right after Amanda was going to be evicted. It was more so a random one for the road, and dear God, where and why am I going with this? Dating back to season 2, every season of Big Brother has featured some form of love outside of just one season, and that would be Big Brother 22 All-Stars 2. The only season to not feature anything of the sort, even though we saw players such as Christmas and Memphis connect postseason, during the season it wasn't a factor to consider. It took 2 decades to rid that studio lot of love, and I'm kind of impressed. But the first showmance we ever saw was between Dr. Will and Shannon, 2 members of the Chilltown Alliance from Big Brother 2. Together, they began a craze that would exist year after year, hooking up in the house both on a personal and sometimes strategic level. Dr. Will was the first person to coin the term showmance, and ever since it's stuck in the reality TV world. But Dr. Will was heavily punished on that season of Big Brother, partially because of how close he was to Shannon. It put a big target on both of their backs, as they were a known quantity. They had 2 reliable votes in their corner, and thus we saw Shannon get taken out early, with Will's head having a bounty on it all season long. But Will went on to win the season despite being in this showmance, and so then suddenly a question was raised. Given Will had used Shannon as a shield, was there some strategic value in coupling up? As it turns out, there was a noticeable trend appearing in the early days of the show, where the players who entered into showmances would go on to win the season. No joke, we saw this happen on season 3 with Lisa, season 5 with Drew, season 7 with Mike Boogie, and season 11 with Jordan. All of these players were attached at the hip in a romantic sense of sorts, and they all won. Unlike in Survivor, where we saw Boston Rob and Amber reach the final 2 of Survivor All-Stars, and then suddenly the opposite happened. Showmances were targeted left and right. Boston Rob and Amber basically ruined it for the rest of them. But in the case of Big Brother, they've been rather successful from the start and consistently have fared well year in and year out.
Hopefully by doing this makes you and I not look as close as what people may think, and I think that we need to stop sleeping in the same bed together. You know what I'm saying?
I was kind of playing Diane to try to get this response out of her, because I know, like, Diane is the kind of person that
If you tell her to act a certain way, then she's not gonna play it as well as if it was actually like natural reaction.
Even on Big Brother 4, the first season where a player not in a Showmance won, the winner had her ex-boyfriend in the house alongside her, allowing the two of them to secretly buddy up for strategic value. Likewise, I think it's worth pointing out that after Will and Lisa won on BB2 and BB3, Big Brother 4 was all about exes. The theme of the season was past love coming back to haunt you. But this worked in the winner's favor, as well as the runner-up, Allison, as she got into a Showmance and also reached the final two. None of these players were necessarily penalized for being romantically connected with other players. The first romance we saw occur on Big Brother, the first relationship to be brought into the house from the outside world, didn't start in the game, was James and Sarah on Big Brother 6. Now, they didn't find much success in the game, finishing in 10th and 7th place, and really, when it comes down to already established partners, there isn't much data to pull from anyway. There's only 4 couples in total throughout all of Big Brother, although 2 of those 4 began on Big Brother, as we saw Jeff and Jordan begin on season 11 and Rachel and Brendan begin on season 12. But then they returned on season 13 as established pairs going into the season. They were already romantically linked, and then Rachel went on to win the season, padding the ridiculously small sample size of stats. But go figure, just like all of the previous Showmance winners I talked about, here we have another winner of the show who began in a Showmance and then returned as a souped up version of what we saw from the year before. Another tick in favor of getting into a Showmance. And in case you're wondering, who is the 4th final relationship to enter the game? That was Ryan and Jen from Big Brother 9. Ryan went on to finish in 2nd place, almost winning, but I gotta say, the 2 of them being connected from the jump was not a blessing for either of their games whatsoever. Easily the biggest crash and burn of romance we have ever seen. Literally, Jen attempted to stay in the game by calling out her boyfriend as racist. That was her Hail Mary strategy, smear his reputation enough that the house will want to keep her over him. Oh yeah, and in case you're wondering, they are not together today. By my estimation, we have had about 9 Flirtmances thus far in the history of the show, and even then, this is an up in the air category. For example, I put Dr. Will and Janelle from Season 7 All-Stars in this category, if only because they never do anything particularly intimate, at least not that we're allowed to see, while on the show, except lots and lots and lots of heavy flirting. Like, a ton of flirting. Like, I can't believe Will's game ended because he didn't take this to the next level. I mean, he was in a relationship, so I get it, but still, what? And yes, that's a bit of a simplified explanation, but on top of the old school success of the Showmance winners, it's important to note that the first All-Star season of the show featured a Showmance, Mike and Erica, reaching the final 2, kind of like Rob and Amber from Survivor All-Stars, but yeah, not exactly.
Number 1 don't in showmancing, don't ever get real feelings for the person. Showmances can be very effective for you. It kind of turned into a homance.
It's all fun and games until she gives it up and then gets voted out by me on Thursday.
I am going to hell.
And that final 4 of the same season consisted of them 2 and Will and Janelle, all 4 players who were flirting with each other all season. So not only was success found between strangers, but it was also found with the all-star returning players. Danielle Donato was in a Showmance on Big Brother 8 and placed 2nd. Hayden Moss was in a Showmance on Big Brother 12 and won. Nicole Franzel was in a Showmance on BB 18 and won. Tyler Crispin was in a Showmance and nearly won Big Brother 20. Jackson and Holly reached the final 2 of Big Brother 21 and are statistically the most successful Showmance we have ever seen. After saying all of that, it's gotta be said, the precedent was set early and it's not let up even for a second. And while we've certainly seen some train wrecks occur, some Showmances flop hard and just not do very well in the game, such as Caitlin and Jeremy on Big Brother 15, or Swaggy and Bailey on Big Brother 20, or Jace and Holly on Big Brother 5, overall it is less a norm to see these couples not perform that well, or even just one of them after the other is evicted. Many times being the remnant of a Showmance can be a booster for your game, like a meat shield if you will. And the moment you lose your meat, you're somehow less of a threat. That being said, we have seen a lot of failure across the board too. This is not going to be a video all about rainbows and puppies and sunshine. It's not all final 2s and double dates and true love at first sight. Unlike the 4 romance options or the 9 Flirtmances, Of the 37 showmances I have tallied, yeah, 37, 16 of them didn't even average making it past the halfway point of their season. The worst cases being the ones that I just mentioned, as well as Justin and Dana on Big Brother 4, Clay and Shelly on BB17, Cody and Jessica on Big Brother 19, and Jack and Annalise on Big Brother 21. Romance is a double-edged sword when it comes to the game, and nearly half of the players throughout the show's history have fallen victim to its detractors. While many are split up early, even some of the winners in this case, despite getting first place, such as Lisa and Hayden, they were hindered dramatically by the showmance that they found themselves in, both being nominated in the first half of the game because of that, losing their bed buddy before the jury even forms. It for sure puts a target on their back. They just happen to be the one who isn't clipped for whatever reason. And one of those reasons being something like, say, Hayden. He intelligently intended this to be a potential scenario. He was ready to clip his showmance if need be. She was a parachute to withstand the potential impact of such a nomination. And then with Lisa, she was given the opportunity to vote her showmance, Eric, back into the game, and she chose not to. It appeared cold-blooded, but was a strategic move to keep a target off her back. Go figure, in both these cases, these players won the game.
If you want Amy to return, raise your red paddle. If you want Eric to return, raise your black paddle.
His girlfriend, or the person that he's been with, is the person that kept him from coming back and trying to win $500,000. But if Eric came back, he wouldn't understand why I wasn't still with Kiara and Roddy. And his mentality would have just been, oh, well, you know, the four of us are back together again and everything would be great. And I just can't forgive like that. And the thought of Eric coming back in the house and teaming back up with Roddy obviously didn't sit well with me.
Contrast this with, say, Cody and Jessica from BB19, who both fell on the sword for each other, and you've got a vastly different outcome. I analyzed the numbers across the history of the show and found that the general perception that being in a showmance can be a benefactor is actually turning out to be slightly true. Not to such a degree that I would say you should do it on any given season, but if you're wondering if it more hurts or helps your game, the answer is that it leans towards helping. The average cast size of all Big Brother seasons is around 15 players, although modern Big Brother usually skews to 16. But regardless, what I found is that when you combine the data between every Flirtmance, Showmance, and Romance in the history of Big Brother, the average placement of either player in one of these relationships is slightly above the average of a regular player overall. About 7th place out of 15. It's minor, not a huge deal enough to where I would go back and say definitely do it, but compare that to Survivor where it was almost exactly 50%, neither good nor bad. Big Brother skews positive for both men and women when all is said and done. Women fare about 1% better even, which is a stark contrast to Survivor where they perform 4% worse than men. I think Big Brother as a show being marketed and promoted as a fun summer show with younger casts overall, combined with the continuous success of players in showmances, has been the reason for these numbers being so different. While similar shows in nature, they're both socio-strategic games, Survivor has never been much about love, least of all when you haven't showered or brushed your teeth in over a month, and so even though we have a similar number of examples to pull from and measure between the shows, it's Big Brother that sees love triumph and even skews slightly in favor of it being worthwhile.
If you had to be any animal, what would you be?
An eagle.
Why?
Because they're cool and they fly.
I would be a squirrel.
You could be any animal in the whole world and you'd be a squirrel?
What's wrong with a squirrel? They hang out in neighborhoods and stuff.
A squirrel? What kind of aspirations do you have for yourself?
Ultimately, I asked myself at the top of the video if a showmance was a good idea for your game. The answer is neutral. It skews slightly positive, but the data is saying it's really not that significant, which, much like love, can lead you in either direction. We've seen it work out a lot, but we've also seen it fail and crash and burn too. More than anything, I think the biggest takeaway is that it's not a ball and chain to sink your game, nor will it likely be the key to your success. Like a lot of the number crunching videos that I've put together over the years, I'm finding it's mostly about what you as the individual do with it. Just like many other aspects of the show, in the right hands, it can make all the difference.
I just have to make it official. Congratulations, Will. By a vote of 5-2, you are the winner.
Congratulations, Lisa. By a vote of 9-1, you are the winner.
And the winner
of Big Brother 5 is Drew. Mike, congratulations with full votes. You are the winner of Big Brother All-Stars. Jeff's vote goes to, congratulations, Jordan. Congratulations, Hayden. Congratulations, Rachel. Congratulations, Nicole. Congratulations, Mickey. You have one Big Brother.
And that is all he wrote. That is the history, the success, and a smidge less often failure of romance on Big Brother. As they say, Big Brother is a marathon, not a sprint, and when you're locked up in a snow globe of a house with some other attractive singles for upwards of 99 days, hey, make of that what you will. And if it doesn't last that much longer beyond the show, well, can't say I'm surprised. Over under on a month. I'm pretty sure Big Brother is actually more successful than The Bachelor or The Bachelorette when it comes to having romance last outside and beyond in the postseason, but that's not really what this video was about, so yeah. It is what it is. Either way, thank you guys for watching. A huge thank you to my patrons on the screen. I consider this first base in our Flirtmance, by the way. Just saying. I hope everyone enjoyed the vid, and I will just say on your way out, don't forget there is a big difference between falling in love and falling into the next season of the challenge. And I will see you in the next one once I commence Operation Single Date, held in my office, working on the next video.
Is there another body in here? I wasn't in here.
Who is that in the bed?
Looks like they're having sex.
This is just so bad. It's so bad.
You're fine. You're fine as hell, bro. Just started.
Bessie, can you wake up and tell me where the rest of my $85 bracelet is that you broke?
What?